Hi everyone, thanks for coming back for part 3. I also have this table over here which I didn't show in the last video, but this is probably the most important one because this one was coming up in Haggai 2:17. This is the first match, and then the second match is the one that comes up in Acts 27, which is where this all started from. I was trying to confirm the imagery that I believe is being represented in the 27th chapter and the 28th chapter of the book of Acts when I put in these terms, and they actually came up in the book of Acts chapter 27. And so I believe that confirms that what I was seeing is correct, that all these things were being represented. And so the terms that I added to this table are the words red, moon, egg, and seed. And so you can see the word seed is coming up here at the top. I actually had that word originally. It was coming up where you have the word rock and where you have the word happily, which I believe is a reference to haploid cells. But then you have egg over here in the burgundy, and then you have the word moon over here in the green with the letters M, O, O, N. And so that's coming through where you have the word word, and the word semen is going through the word moon, and you have the word yesh over here in the green, and then you have the word honey over here in the blue. And also over here where you have the word happily, which I mentioned earlier, I believe that has to do with haploid cells. You see that over here it's mentioning that they let 4 anchors from the ship. It says they let go 4 anchors from the stern, and haploid cells are 4 gamete cells. Okay, and I just put in 4 haploid gamete cells so you can see that. It says over here the process results in 4 daughter cells that are haploid, which means they contain half the number of chromosomes of the diploid parent cell. And so gamete cells are haploid cells, and there's 4 of them that are produced when you have meiosis, which is a type of mitosis. You can see that here. It says during meiosis, a diploid cell, which has 2 copies of each chromosome, undergoes 1 round of DNA replication followed by 2 separate cycles of nuclear division to produce 4 haploid cells. And so right here where you have the word happily is where you have the mention of 4 anchors that were let go from the ship. Okay, and so the first match was coming up in Haggai 2:17, which looks like the year 2017. And again, this is a table that I had gone over before, but I just added the words red, moon, egg, and seed. And so you can see that the word moon came up over here in the green. It's going through the word Jehovah, so it's going through the word ova, which I believe the moon represents the ova. And it's also going through the word honey that's over here in the lavender, and it's also going through the word yesh, which is over here in the green. And then you had egg over here at the top, and you had the word red over here in the yellow, and you can barely see that, but the R is over here, and then the D is over here. And it looks like the E might be sharing the E in Jehovah. Okay, this other table is one that I had done on Fairhaven, Bride, Yeshu, Melita, Ark, and Noah. And all those terms had come up. They were coming up in Hebrews 5. And it just so happened to mention the word milk over here, which I talked about earlier. It was saying how some people need milk rather than solid food when it comes to the Bible. But I believe the honey is even a higher level than that. The milk and the honey, I believe it's the two components of the Word of God. But over here you have the word moon was coming up in the green, and also the word melita means honey, so you have the mention of honey in here by way of the word melita, and then you have the word bride coming straight up and down, so moon and bride are parallel to each other. And then you have the word egg over here, and by the way, I think this may even be where the term honeymoon came from, because you'll see the words honey and moon in a lot of these tables, but I'm not going to go over the rest of the terms because I've been over this table before. Okay, and this was the new table that I did to try to confirm that the moon represents the ovary, so I had put moon, ovary, honey, semen, and bride. And as I said in my last video, it's interesting that you have the word ova and the word Jehovah crossing through the word ovary, and ova is another term for ovary. And then you have the word honey over here, and then moon was coming over here in the pink, the letters M, O, O, N. And again, you had the word honey crossing through the word moon, which is interesting. And so you have the word semen over here in the bluish lavender. And then you have the word bride over here, and it's actually part of the word bridegroom. And so this was especially interesting where this came up, because it's coming up in Psalm 19, where it says, it's talking about the sun, and it says, which is as a bridegroom coming out of his chamber, and rejoiceth as a strong man to run his course. His going forth is from the end of the heavens, and his circuit unto the ends of it, and there is nothing hid from the heat thereof. The law of Jehovah is perfect, restoring the soul. The testimony of Jehovah is sure, making wise the simple. The precepts of Jehovah are right, rejoicing the heart. The commandment of Jehovah is pure, enlightening the eyes. The fear of Jehovah is clean, enduring forever. The ordinances of Jehovah are true and righteous altogether, more to be desired than gold, yea, than much fine gold, sweeter also than honey, and the droppings of the honeycomb. So again, you have a reference over here to the Word of God being sweeter than honey. Moreover, by them is thy servant warned, in keeping them there is great reward. Who can discern his errors? Clear thou me from hidden faults. Keep back thy servant also from presumptuous sins. Let them not have dominion over me. Then shall I be upright, and I shall be clear from great transgression. Let the words of my mouth and the meditation of my heart be acceptable in thy sight, O Jehovah, my rock and my redeemer. And this is coming up in verse 14. Okay, and as I said earlier, this is very similar to the one that I had done on the super moon, the super blood red moon, which was the initial table that I did. And this was coming up in Psalm 119, and I had also done this table, which I didn't show in my last video either, but this was in the previous video that I had done, the 3-part video, and I had put in these terms, and they came up in Psalm 119, starting with verse 88, which is the letter Lamed, the beginning of the letter Lamed. It's also the number for Jesus Christ. I talked about that in the last video. But this was going through to 102, and then the verse right after that is where it says thou hast taught me how sweet are thy words to my taste, sweeter than honey to my mouth. And so it's talking about the Word of God being sweeter than honey over here in the very next verse. And this is in Psalm 119. And then it mentions the same thing over here in Psalm 19. So I didn't realize the similarities between Psalms 119 and 19 until I did these tables. They both mention the term honey, and they're both about the Word of God. Okay, so I'm not going to read this again, but you can see that it's all about the Word of God. It says, thy word is settled in heaven, and it's talking about God's ordinances and the law and the precepts. So you can see that's all about the Word of God, and it's likening it to honey, saying it's sweeter than honey. Okay, so that was coming up in Psalm 119, and then the very first table that I did, which was on the super blue red moon, was coming up in Psalm 119. And so all of these tables have the word moon in them, and they all make references to the events that took place in Acts 27, which I believe is a description of the consummation of the covenant. And so in every single one of these tables you have the word moon comes up. And you can see it in this one. It's coming up over here in the burgundy with the letters M-O-O-N. It's going through the word ship. And over here you have the word ovary going through the word fair, and then you had haven over here, which I believe Fair Haven, the island of Crete, represents the ovary. Okay, and so the other thing that I wanted to mention is how I had changed the title. I had originally titled it Acts 27, but then I suspected that this was probably the last chapter of the book of Acts, and I thought the terms last act would be a better title. And so I checked to see, and sure enough, Acts 27 and 28 were the last chapters in the book of Acts. And so I thought I should read Acts 28, since if that is the last act, I thought I should probably know what it says. And sure enough, this did read like what would happen after the rapture, because right after this it talks about a viper that comes out and attaches itself to Paul, bites him on the hand. It's also talking about a bundle of sticks that he had gathered. And this word for sticks is very similar to the word toast in the Greek. You can see that right here. And we just had this Google doodle with toast. Then it goes on to talk about how he shook the beast off of his hand and he didn't get hurt. And he threw it into the fire and that he wasn't harmed. And it talks about how they were able to heal and do miracles. So it seems to make reference to the two witnesses. And then in verse 11, it mentions Castor and Pollux, which are the two stars in the constellation Gemini. So it seems to be making a reference to the two witnesses over here. And you see the mention of 3 days over here as well. And so I wanted to share this table on the two witnesses, but since I'm running out of time, I'll have to do that in another video. But it's interesting that it starts out in chapter 10, where John is given the little book, which is as sweet as honey, and then it goes on to talk about the two witnesses right after that. So it seems to parallel Acts 28 when they land in Melita, which means honey, and then it seems to be making a reference to the two witnesses after that. But I'll have to share this table in another video. Thanks for watching, and God bless you.